Good afternoon. Thanks so much for having us. This is a different audience than what we're used to, so really, really appreciate the chance to be here. As I said, my name is Arne Duncan. This would be sort of a tough topic, but hopefully uplifting and inspiring as well. Just a quick sort of intro in terms of what we do and why. Gun violence, unfortunately, has haunted me my whole life. I started to lose friends, guys who helped protect me on the South and West Sides when I was playing basketball when I was a teenager. I think that stuff sort of shapes you and scars you in some ways. A little bit difficult to talk about. Fast forward to my teenage years to 20 years after that, I led the Chicago Public Schools for 7.5 years. Lots I'm proud of. Happy to talk about that on another session. But on my watch, during my time in the Chicago Public Schools, on average, we had a child killed every 2 weeks due to gun violence. It was a staggering rate of loss. Thank God never in a school, but walking home, at home, going to a corner store, on a bus. And I don't think I know we as adults failed to keep our kids safe. When our family moved to D.C. in 2009, I thought things were as bad as they could be. They couldn't get worse. And unfortunately, things got a lot worse for a whole lot of reasons. So for me, coming home to Chicago in 2016, this felt like the crisis facing the city. I thought it was being unaddressed. People were either a little paralyzed or overwhelmed and wanted to try and figure out what to do. I'll give you a couple facts and a couple quick opinions, and we'll get into a conversation. So just facts. Chicago's 6 times more violent than New York. Chicago's 3 to 4 times more violent than L.A. We are the anomaly. It doesn't have to be that way. It shouldn't be that way. People often say, well, Chicago has strict gun laws, so the gun laws don't work. But I always say Chicago is not an island. We don't have a moat around us. Indiana is 15 minutes from my house. The guns pour into us from Indiana, Wisconsin, Mississippi, and other places. So that doesn't work. Folks often say if you're having violence, having high crime, you need more police. We actually have as many or more police than New York and LA per citizen. So if more police made us safer, Chicago would be the safest city in the country. In fact, one of the biggest drivers of violence, unfortunately, is police ineffectiveness. Very few crimes get solved in the communities that we're going to talk about, Roseland on the south side, North Lawndale on the west side. If you shoot and kill somebody, there's a 10 to 11% chance that you get arrested. So that means there's an 89 to 90% chance that there's no consequences. And so one of the biggest drivers of violence is retaliation. When folks don't have justice in the criminal justice system, they take it upon themselves to have street justice. So as a private citizen coming home, I would love to get rid of the guns. I'm pretty radical. I didn't know how to do that. I would love to rebuild trust between the police and the community, but that's going to take decades. That's going to take the police admitting something's actually wrong, which that hasn't happened yet. So I didn't know how to do those things, but I did think that we could create hope and opportunity for young people and give them a reason to put down the guns. So that was the genesis of Chicago CRED. We've evolved and changed a lot over the past 5.5 years. We've worked with our partners with about 1,000, primarily young men, but we also have women, we have teens, we have some older guys, but 18 to 24s. 75 to 80% of who's shooting and being shot in Chicago on the south and west sides, and the profiles of the victims and the perpetrators are the same. It's literally often the same person. And so there are 5 pillars to our work. We have an amazing street outreach team. These are guys from the different cliques, from the different gangs. They're like our HR function. They recruit folks into our program. We did give everyone a life coach, and Hicks is one of our star life coaches. We'll talk about that. We always say experience can be the best teacher, but it doesn't have to be your own experience. You can learn from others. We have an amazing clinical team. We have to help our guys heal from a lifetime of trauma. There's a saying that hurt people, and that's true, but also healed people can heal themselves and their families and the community. We have education tutors. We've had lots of folks get high school diplomas. We have a set of folks in college. Billy's going to graduate from college in not too long from now. That's been amazing to see. And then we have a jobs team. And our goal is to move folks from the illegal economy, which in Chicago all too often leads to violence, to the legal economy. So our young men and women work with us usually for a year to 18 months. We then have about 44 employers in 17 different industries who hire at the back end. And we've been at this 5.5 years. We've had some folks working for 4.5 years now. So that's been pretty amazing making that transition. But that's the background, and we just really want to get into a conversation. Everyone's story is so powerful. I said Hicks is a star life coach of one of our best partners, the Youth Peace Center in Roseland on the south side, where he grew up, where he lived. And Hicks used to battle with guns, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I really think he battles for the hearts and minds of our young people now. And it's almost like playing chess. He's trying to show them what's the right next move or what's the wrong move and how do you move strategically. But it's not a game, it's literally life and death. And that if our young men make the wrong move, and we've had too many losses, it literally costs them their life. Our young people are growing up in war zones, and we'll talk about that. But Mr. Hicks, if you can give the audience a sense of what are the most important lessons? There's so much you're trying to teach and instill every single day. What are the most important lessons that you're trying to instill in our young men?
I think the most important lesson I try to instill in our young men is to let them know that, you hurting someone's family. You hurting the mother. I just was looking at a bag I keep with like 19 obituaries in it from this year alone. It's hard for to see a parent crying. We assist at funerals. Some of these people I don't even know. We just go just for the support and security. And just trying to let guys know, it's something better than life than going to shoot someone and killing them. And like Arne said, the chances of you getting any repercussions from it is slim to none. So that in itself creates a monster. If I know I can go shoot and kill someone, nothing's going to happen to me, then I'll continue to do that until I meet my fate. And that's what we try and keep our guys from doing, going down the wrong path and making those same mistakes.
And you've talked a lot about the addictive power of guns and the power that guns had over you. And for folks that maybe don't understand that culture, don't understand that life, give them a little sense for that.
It's nothing like it. To our culture and our generation, you can offer a young man $30,000 or 30 guns, and he's going to take the 30 guns. It's a sense of invincibility. It's rehabilitation that comes with it. You just have to be able to work with these guys and don't give up. I know a lot of people look at Chicago news and they think the worst. The news is just a small portion of what the media want to put out there. But what the actuality is the groundwork we put in with other organizations assisting us to help redirect some of the behaviors. And it works. We do have hard times. I'm not going to sit here and say everything is peaches and cream. We have tragedy, we have triumph, ups and downs. But I work with a team of people who haven't given up yet and don't look like they're going to give up no time soon. And that's what motivates me every day. And plus, it's therapeutic for me. It keeps me level-headed because I was a gun head. I don't think it was a gun I didn't own, but now I'm seeing how things have changed, man. It's the capacity of the rounds. They run around shooting what they call a switch. That's the most known thing out in Chicago. It's probably like 50 rounds within a second. You can't even get away from that. You can't run or anything. So it's just a hell of a battle. And it's a battle for us as life coaches to stay alive, too, because we're dealing with both sides. He's from one organization. I got to deal with somebody from another organization, and they don't get along. So sometimes they look at me like, whose side you on? So, you just have to keep it clean, man, and keep your head on a swivel.
One thing we really believe is that to do this...
Yeah, thank you.
This is absolutely visceral, boots on the ground, hands-on. This is not Ivy Tower researchers or policymakers. These are folks who have lived experience. And unfortunately, Hicks spent more than a decade incarcerated at different times. And we go into Cook County Jail and recruit young men out of Cook County Jail to come into our program when they get out. And you went back with me one time as a free man to go into Cook County Jail. What was that experience like?
Well, so if you don't know Cook County Jail, when you arrive at Cook County Jail as a prisoner or inmate, you get stripped to nothing. You get on this yellow line, you spread them, you do everything, cough, all the stuff you see in movies. But fortunately, this time, I remember Arne saying, do you want to go up there? And I was kind of hesitant, like, yeah, but I don't want to go through all the procedures. So none of that happened. To cut a long story short, I was able to go in there untouched, unscathed, go on the same deck where I used to be housed at and talk to some of the same young men. And then the best part about that, a few of those guys were released and we now serve them. So it's just a good thing. You got to trust the process, man. I know people sit here and listen to us and it may seem tragic, man. Trust the process. It's more tragedy in your mindset than it actually is out in the city of Chicago. So, and it's a great feeling to do this work. I don't know no other work I'd rather do that's meaningful to me. I'm in my own community where I've had my hiccups, my trials and tribulations, and I'm literally working on the same block where I had all my problems at. Every day. I'm there, every day.
We have a long, long way to go. Chicago's still way too violent, but Roseland on the south side, and we'll get to the west side in a minute. Roseland, where Hicks grew up, where he lives, city's down about 10% this year in terms of violence. Roseland's down 30%. And we hate the holidays. I used to love the holiday. We hate Memorial Day. We hate 4th of July. We hate Labor Day. Memorial Day, we had 0 shootings in Roseland in North Lawndale. But the fact that you're down in Roseland, we're down 3 times what the city's down, what does that feel like to you? What does that mean to you?
I mean, it's kudos to the work. It's other organizations besides Chicago CRED. It's other partners we work with. It's kudos to the first responders and building those relationships. We do work with a lot of gentlemen that were former street members, and so the connection is very deep, it's meaningful, and it's a thought-out process. Nothing is just done spontaneously. We have staff meetings. We have clinical meetings where we sit with therapists and sit down and go over assessments. So it's a process. It's not just you meet this young man and you start serving him. You get assessments to see if he's safe to come to this site. Do we have to service him out of town? Do we have to relocate him? Do we have to send him to this man over here in the orange Billy? So it's a process, strategic process, but it works. It works. And if you want to see it work, jump on a flight and visit Chicago. Come to Roseland, give Arne a call, and we'll take you on a tour.
We have guests all the time. People get sick of hearing from me, so we'd love to have some more guests. So
you're welcome.
I mean that very sincerely. Let me shift to Aaron. And Aaron, obviously for us coming out here to Aspen, this is a different world, and you got out and mountain biked a little bit this morning. But for folks that might not know Chicago, who might not know the South Side, who might not know Roseland, one, talk about what it's like to grow up in Roseland. I think many folks may have a perception, and our world is incredibly gray, it's incredibly complex, there's no black and white, but they may have a perception of what it is to be a gang member. And that's a scary thing, that's a dangerous thing. And I talk about, I grew up probably 4 miles from where you grew up, but different neighborhood, and both my parents were educators, so my sister and brother and I all became educators. That was our family business. But based upon your family, your block, where you grew up, it was a different path, and give people some sense of that.
So me growing up, fell into the gang life early. I wanted to be a part of it for the sake of the fact I thought it was cool. You know, the guns, the drugs, the women, everything else. You know, I thought it was all cool. Excuse me. Growing up in the gang life, I done went through more hell than blessings, safe to say. A lot of deaths, close friends, overdoses on drugs. Coming up from Roseland, a lot of black-owned businesses, you know, well, it's a lot of businesses, you know, that's not even there anymore, you know, as far as like, you know, money loss and murders, you know, people what they call it, poverty, things like that. So, I mean, growing up in Roseland, it was hard for anybody who was in the gang, but we had no sense of direction during that time, so.
And people often have a perception that, you know, everyone carrying a gun is a threat, a predator, or whatever. And unfortunately, because our neighborhoods are so unsafe, because people do not feel protected by the police, many folks feel compelled to carry a gun. So talk about at what age you started carrying a gun and why. I
started carrying a gun at the age of 14. I watched my brother carry guns. You know, I wanted to be just like him. I put myself in the gang life at an early age, and I made enemies at an early age, literally before I was in high school. So carrying a gun, it was a sense of my protection, just because I put myself in the mix, and I don't let them guys know my face and where I'm from and where I be. So carrying the gun for me was just basically to fend off what I was asking for.
So we talk about people who were playing offense versus playing defense. Did you see yourself as someone who's playing offense or playing defense?
I always played defense. I never played offense. To elaborate a little bit, playing offense is basically you going looking for the trouble. So if I'm playing offense, I'm looking to go kill somebody. I play defense. I'm in my area, sitting there chilling, minding my business until somebody come through there and act crazy, and then that's when I play defense. Other than that, no, I don't do offense.
And talk about what you're doing now, what's changed, but also having folks, and it's not just, as Hicks said, we have incredible teams of folks who do this work. We just have a couple of us here. We have a lot more folks back home doing the work right now as we're speaking, but talk about what it's like having folks like Hicks and Billy in your life and what you're trying to do now.
So I came through Chicago CRED in 2019. This is the guy I dealt with, or this is the guy who dealt with me. He saw right through me, literally. We done had our ups and downs, and we done argued a lot, But if I could say one thing, this is one man that'll put you in check real quick. You know what I'm saying? He'll make you realize what you want to do is not what you want to do. And I love him for it because he put me in the position of what I'm doing now. Ended up meeting Billy once I graduated, transitioned from CRED, and he connected me with the organization called Iman. And through them, I was a part of their Weekend Warriors program where I was learning a trade in welding. And May 24th, I graduated with my certificates. This past May, I graduated with my advanced in MIG, TIG, and stick welding, along with some minor certifications in plasma cutting, CNC machining, 3D printing, and a lot more other, minor certifications. So, and once I transitioned from Iman, I'm currently in the process of getting my CDLs.
And last question, these transitions, these transformations are not linear, they're not overnight. We have good days, we have tough days, these are not straight up. But just take a second, Aaron, because as you've changed and transformed, doing things different, the neighborhood still has a long way to go. You're still living in a war zone. You've been shot at multiple times, thank God you've never been hit, you've lost countless folks. So talk about, as you're trying to move in this very different direction, how you navigate day-to-day reality. We talked last night about a situation 2 weeks ago that could have been deadly. So how do you try and move different now to stay alive?
Well, since I've been on the right track, I move different. You don't see me unless I want to be seen. I'm literally a ghost, literally. But me, as far as guys living in a war zone, where guys come to Chicago CRED or Iman, regardless if we're making a change, a lot of us are still known faces. So we're working to get out of Chicago, lead the state, but we're also working to give back to our communities. So that's what we strive for. We big on change because growing up, when we hear the word opportunity and change, we kind of scared of that, because we're not offered that, So, we just move how we move, I guess.
And you guys are just getting a snapshot, a snippet of how deep and powerful these stories are. I want to shift to Billy. And Billy, you and I have an interesting and complicated history, if you want to give some folks of that. Let's start there.
Yeah, so at 16 years old, I made the worst mistake of my life. I became a perpetrator of gun violence when I unfortunately shot a 17-year-old kid who happened to be at the time the #1 basketball player in the nation, Benji Wilson, at Simeon High School, who happened to be Arne Duncan's friend. They grew up together playing basketball. That was one of the worst mistakes I ever made in my life. And I went away for 20 years. And what I learned in those 20 years was to never have to respond to my anger, but try to be faster in my thinking. And I think that's the thing that we're trying to teach young men right now, how to outthink their feelings. Because if you respond to the way you feel in moments of crisis, you're going to walk away with some serious regret. And we come from circumstances where there's very small margins. So once we step out of those margins, we pay a heavy price. 30-some years later, I met Arne at a peace rally, literally 2 weeks after my own son had been shot and killed. So now, having to understand what it's like to be a perpetrator of gun violence, it came full circle by understanding what it's like to be a victim of gun violence. And when I met Arne on this peace march, I asked him, did he know about me? He was like, yeah, but he wanted me to tell him my story. So we talked, and actually, I started working with this organization called Iman, the Inner City Muslim Action Network, maybe a month before this peace march. I literally got hired 2 weeks after my son got killed. And that was what helped me deal with my grief, because I knew that I was going to be working with young men just like my son, and I had a responsibility to teach them how not to end up becoming a victim of gun violence. this work that we do is so heavy because we're dealing with young men, like Aaron said, who don't get a lot of opportunities that come their way. So they feel like the circumstances they living in is the only thing that they got. So now we fighting not just to reduce their risk of being victims of gun violence, we also fighting to help them reduce their risk of being victims of circumstances.
This work is by far the most humbling work I've ever done, and you just learn so many lessons every day. But something Billy said at the time that blew me away and still blows me away is if the young man who killed his son came into our program, that he would mentor him and take him under the wing. And if my son or daughter were killed, and I worry about them every day, I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I'd have that in me. But talk about, and I know he meant that from his heart, and it's really, really impacted me. Talk about what you're thinking when you say that, and what do you mean?
So as a young kid at 16 years old, having committed the tragic mistake that I did that costed a young man his life, and having the world just show me how much hate they had for me, and the only thing I needed people to understand was the fact that I made a mistake. I picked up a gun, and I got gun problems that I couldn't get out of. So how could I be a hypocrite? The moment I found out my son had died, I knew right then and there I had to extend forgiveness to the young men who had did that, because they were just caught up in the same cycle of ignorance that I was in when I was 16 years old, when I unfortunately took somebody's life. If I could do that all over again, I wouldn't have done that. So how can I now be committed to not making the same mistake, to try to help young men like Aaron learn how to think ahead of their problems? And if the only thing I could think about the young man who killed my son was taking their life, I would be a hypocrite. And I know that if these guys live long enough, they're gonna end up being able to realize what greatness they have inside of them. And they need people like me and Hicks to help show them that, because somebody helped show me that. And I don't want to have them go sit 20 and 30 years of their life, having to figure that out. So, and I will still mentor those young men who did that to my son.
We do have more than our share of heartbreaking days. We also have more than our share of extraordinary days. And I don't say this lightly. One of the most powerful evenings of my life was the evening 34 years to the day after Billy killed Benji, where Billy reconciled with his two brothers. And talk about what that experience was like.
So I had done my time. I had been home close to 14 years, and a mutual friend of the Wilson brothers and myself, he wanted to have us sit down and have this reconciliation. And I thought it was important for me to sit at that table and allow them to have, I wouldn't say closure, but they had grieved the loss of their brother up until that moment without having a chance to really talk to me and tell me how I made them feel. And I felt like I needed to give them that. And I've always felt like the work that I was doing with these young men, if I don't teach them how to resolve their conflict and understand that for me, reconciliation is the best form of retaliation, then there was no way that I can sit at that table and not offer them some resolution. I had to take advantage of that because I'm a peacemaker right now. And we walked away from that table, and one of the brothers, Anthony Wilson, told me that the reason why he was willing to talk to me because his mother actually told him right before she died that he needed to forgive me. And he told me that because I killed his brother, now I have the responsibility of being his brother. And I think that's the type of, we don't want to have these situations unfold before we teach young men how to resolve conflict without it leading to somebody losing their life. So I think I'm the biggest proponent and agent for change and reconciliation. So it was a privilege and an honor for me to be a part of that.
Billy's leading all of our work with our alumni like Aaron, and we need to get him some more staff. But he also focuses on the west side in North Lawndale, which has always been the top 3, 4, 5 most violent neighborhoods in Chicago. Again, city's down 10% this year. North Lawndale's down 50%. And what does that feel like to see the progress that we're making in North Lawndale now?
So it's a good feeling, like Hit said, because when you know these guys have went through our program and they understand now what it's like to really just see themselves as being more than just a statistic. You know, we put flesh on statistics. When we talk about 50%, we look at people who are now at a lower risk of being a victim of gun violence than they were when they came to us. You know, this work, sometimes you see it in the news and you see numbers. We see people every day. So if it was 50%, if it was 5%, when I know somebody comes to work and shows up in the program every day, it's just a great feeling because I know what it's like to come to work and it's a seat empty. I've lost 10 young men in the last 5 years that I've worked with directly in this work, and it never gets any easier. It never gets any easier. So I'm definitely gonna celebrate those numbers till we get to a point to where we don't have to worry about our young men being victims. We're just doing maintenance.
And final question for each of you, and we're running out of time here, so 30 seconds each for, again, an audience where this may be a pretty different or foreign world. What's the most important thing you want them to take away from this conversation? Start with you.
The most important thing I want you to take from this is do your resources. All we ask for is like referrals. These guys need a different environment. If they're able to move out the city of Chicago, be somewhere else safe and work, you just have to give them the opportunity. And for those that have opportunities, just reach out to us so we help some of these young men save some lives.
I would say for any of you guys who are close with anyone in my generation, I'll be 26 this year. For my generation, just try to get them to trust you. Let them know that you can trust, you know what I'm saying, the people that's trying to help you. Because, you know, we've been lied to our whole lives as far as trust. So that's one big thing we need to take a big step in that direction, is to get the younger generation to trust.
I would say never be too quick to judge if you're not willing to help.
Thanks so much for having us. Just two quick final thoughts. People often say it's great you're giving guys a second chance. I reject it. I think in most cases we're giving them a first chance, and that sort of every structure in their life, family, school, community failed them, and we're giving them a chance late in life, a second chance. And the second thing is hopefully get a sense that I think our young men aren't the problem, they're the solution to the problem. And those closest to these cycles of violence, the Mr. Hickses of the world, the Billy Moores of the world, our other life coach and outreach workers, they are uniquely positioned to help mentor Aaron and his generation grow. And without their leadership, without their commitment, we can't get there, but with their leadership, we have a chance to do something that's transformative. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.